Well, that's just prime.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 6 of That's Just Prime, a Beast Wars podcast. I am ArrowFyre, and I am joined today by Chris, Carnage Creations. Say hello, Chris.
Hello, everyone. Hope everyone is well, and thanks for joining us once again.
We have done quite a few episodes now. We've worked through 5 episodes of the cartoon, finishing with Chain of Command just recently. We've had a Toycast episode in between. We're getting into a flow of season 1 now with one of my favorite episodes in all the Beast Wars. I think Chris's as well. Yeah. So we're on to Power Surge, and very much a spotlight episode, which we do get spotlight episodes, and it is a bit one and done, but it is very memorable in its own right. So this episode, we start off following no real consequences of the previous episodes. It's kind of its own standalone.
Yeah, it's kind of forgotten for the time being.
It is a bit. It could be almost placed anywhere. But the episode starts with Power Surge with a wide nature shot somewhere in Earth or the wilderness, and in the sky of a American eagle, I suppose, which will work to the assumption that birds have evolved to this level at this point of whatever prehistoric Earth we're on, and they're fully formed. But it doesn't matter anyway, because Pterosaur comes along and eats it. So there you go.
We get this nice, lovely panning shot, and then bang, Pterosaur chomps him in one bite.
Now, okay, just going into that point, Pterosaur's coming in and he's eating a mammal. Wasn't it Tarantula said, like, it's, I don't have any real blood, just mech fluid. Well, my filters will adjust. You don't need to eat a bird. You just decided
just for the sick and twisted part of it. It's not for the nutrition.
To which he says it's good being a Predacon. So it's just like a big evil bad guy roaming the skies.
Yeah.
But lo and behold, he sees a floating mountain. And I know what you're thinking. Mountains don't fly. But this one does. It's very much a Sonic the Hedgehog mountain with a Master Emerald crystal risen up from the ground, which, of course, is the result of, you guessed it, Energon that's kept it very suspended. Oh, and a hell of a lot of it. Now, Pterosaur exclaims from the start, "By the Inferno," which we got a few of these kind of, sayings that go on by Primus, by sayings. The pit. So we're going with, I suppose this is Predacon jargon. We haven't got quite so many jumping gyros, but we got by the Inferno instead. Pterosaur swoops in initially in pterodactyl mode and has a look around, and he sees a considerable amount of Energon there, who then decides it's a good point to chance a scan, even though nothing about it looks safe. But he transforms into robot mode, and he knows he's going to shut down pretty quickly. He already starts to short out, transforms, and starts to take a scan of what's around him.
It's very much that, when you're doing something at home, like you're trying to be a handyman or whatever, and you're going to hurt yourself and you do it anyway. It's very much that attitude. He's like, this is probably going to do some damage, but I've got to scan it. It's like, ooh, look at this Energon. I need to get in there and check it out. And as you say, as soon as he lands, he transforms, and it's instant surging on him. And the computer's like, no.
Computer says no.
You need to go to beast mode, or you will shut down.
Yeah, I mean, again, Pterosaur showing that he's not the sharpest knife in the drawer, because we again had it in the pilot episode. When you get large concentrated spells of Energon, you cannot be in your robot mode, yet he goes for it anyway. So he's not learning from his previous experiences, but tries to take a scan, and it instantly backfires on his scanning equipment, shooting him backwards into this flung suspended position. And he's more or less, we don't see it very well, it's not that well animated, but he's more or less tied to the Energon crystals. And that's when you feel he's in for real trouble. And by the law of Transformers, he should probably explode at this point. He should completely, he's got far too much Energon build-up, far too raw, far too concentrated. However, as with the premise of this episode, Pterosaur's absorbing the Energon to a point that it it goes straight into his superstructure, turns red by doing so, and is essentially steroided up. He is massively powered up by this point.
Yeah, big power up. He hits the energon, as you say. It sort of binds him in position, and then it just draws into his body. For some reason, it doesn't blow him up. A special type of energon, what it like Superman, a different type of kryptonite this time. And he absorbs it. It just stores in his body, and he's zooped up, ready to go. And Doug, the voice actor here, changes the voice styling as well. He puts a very deep, gruff, powered up, like you say, steroided up. You know, the vocal drops an octave, and it's very effective. And Doug does this quite a bit. We noted it a couple episodes ago when Pterosaur's planning and scheming, and the high pitch comes up as he goes. So the voice acting here is great, and we love that from Doug, and the voice acting he always puts in is great.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because Doug Parker doing a tremendous job as Pterosaur. We're seeing, as we've said before, the Starscream-esque character, that scheming and this squealing voice, again, very Starscream. When he would say Pterosaur, terrorize, I'm not going to do it, but he would be very
you will kill your
arching
voice.
I would a bit, and it's arching and it's screaming, it's tighter, but when he's got this power, it's gruff, it's bulkier, it's heavier, it's deeper, so it's showing the talent of a voice actor.
And speaking of Starscream, after Pterosaur gets this power up, he rockets out of this floating mountain, and because he's so juiced on the energon power up, he has essentially big afterburners in bright red just firing out from him as he launches off. Team Rocket strikes again up into the sky.
He does that great pose up to that point with one of my favorite, where you get the circle, almost panoramic shot to which he screams, "I'm invincible!" And but it echoes throughout the chamber.
Yeah, it's a great scene. It's a really great open to this episode, and it sort of sets it up to what's going to happen next, which is cool.
So with this afterburner effect, he goes straight away. He clenches his fists and goes for Megatron. He wants the power. He wants to usurp, and again the Starscream-esque character, which is a good development and something you can work out as well. But he is following the similar traits. He wants to overrule, he wants to usurp. But up until this point, Pterosaur was just a fairly weak minion. Whilst he was one of my favorite characters, he wasn't necessarily bringing a lot to the table. Now he's a serious player. And so again, he goes straight for Megatron.
And again, we've noted before, he is big. Like, he's a big character. You sort of forget how large he is. But he's dumb. He's dumb as a sack of hammers, like Scott McNeil would say. But he's not really used in any great way in many episodes, but because this is a spotlight episode, of course, it's all about Pterosaur.
So with Pterosaur shooting off, going straight for Megatron, Cheetor is very, very high, standing on a cliff, doing his best mountain goat impression, seeing Pterosaur fly away, to which he exclaims he's never seen Pterosaur move that quick, and says he won't leave me in the dust, and then legs it off. We are led to believe he's chasing after Pterosaur, but ultimately he heads straight back to the Maximal headquarters to report what he has seen, whilst Pterosaur is going back to the dark side to confront Megatron.
So we know they're heading in their directions, and we flick over to the Predacons, and they're working on their new autocannon system to protect the base. Megatron's got a probe set up with a Maximal signature, and they test the cannon out. Essentially, it blows it up, and they're all like, "Ooh, this is nice." And then all of a sudden, Pterosaur lands in, juiced out of his brain, challenges Megatron to a fight, essentially.
You get that real gruffness that's there. I love that kind of, it's just so, this cowardice plan that someone like yourself will conceive of, Megatron. It's very Joker-like. It's very maniacal, and he's completely off his head at this point. But he has the ability to back it up, to which he squares off and he says, "I am assuming command of the Predacons," to which the other Predacons exclaim, but Megatron, playing it cool in his Tyrannosaurus mode, just walks up and says, "I thought you'd learned your lesson about challenging me, Pterosaur." To which I think, what previous challenge has there been? You can believe it for his character, but are we led to believe that there has been previous usurpers in the Terracon? Are we?
We can leave that in.
No, we can't. I suppose. Are there previous usurps of command in the Predacon ranks?
It's quite possible. Like, it could have been on ship before they even got to Earth. That it makes sense for his character normally that he is a bit conniving, like you say, a little Starscream-esque. So we can imagine that he has challenged Megatron in the past that we may or may not know about.
But then obviously the battle starts. Megatron is more than happy to entertain a challenge to his ruling, and then instantly transforms and fires his very toy accurate hip-mounted missiles, which fire straight up at Pterosaur.
and we see that someone on the editing crew got a new version of After Effects because the explosions on Pterosaur look very lifelike flame, bursts, but not animated as such. Like they don't match the show. It's very odd.
Search for bonfire effects. Return.
1996 After Effects, fire effects. Just paste, expand.
Helps a good one. Move on.
But yes, as you say, Megatron, little hip cannons out, bang bang, shoots into Pterosaur, which does absolutely nothing.
Literally shooting from the hip and doesn't do anything, causes Pterosaur to laugh it off. And we see the start of Pterosaur's arsenal. And who knew this guy was so armored? Now, maybe we have seen and will see some of this weaponry come to boot, but not on this scale. Instantly, two pretty large shoulder cannons come out of nowhere, and he starts firing and raining Hail Mary at Megatron at this point, and he's causing Megatron to...
They're like bigger than his head. I don't know. Where have they come from? They've just manifested out of his rage, I guess. And also, where did this giant rifle come from that he has in a minute? Like, he's just pulled them out of nowhere. Like, where is he hiding this stuff? He doesn't even have wings in this mode. They all shrink down into nothing.
We see a lot of what Pterosaur has to offer. We don't see his traditional gun, but he's flying and chasing after Megatron with his massive shoulder cannons. We do see the shoulder cannons later on, but they're considerably not more steroided petite. Up, shall we say? Yeah. The juice is worn off by that point, but these times they're bigger than Primal's cannons, and they're just working Megatron over, which causes Megatron to stumble and fall, and effectively makes Megatron go a little bit desperate, to which he says, "You treacherous worm, I'll eliminate you forever," or whatever he says. And that then leads to this absolute badass rifle coming out. It's got iron sights or laser sights, and he's shooting, making this great pulse noises that just takes Megatron out completely, causes him to fall off a cliff and completely break into a million pieces and shut down. That is the end of Megatron.
He waspinators all the way down the cliffside.
It's a level of death that Waspinator can only attest to, but it's he's really taken him out, and it leaves the other Predacons in quite shock. Even the likes of Tarantulas, who you start to see playing his cards close to his chest now, maybe starting to go off doing his own thing, but
he's a little sus.
Scorponok is Scorponok's very much in shock. Waspinator's in shock, but Tarantulas is like, I don't trust this situation, but I've got to take it for what it is right now. And they're just in disarray.
Yeah, and Pterosaur sort of vows to take out the Maximals next. And while he's continuing his little speech and he recites all these lines that he's so tough and so strong, he starts to realise that he's running out of juice. So he needs to hightail it back to the mountain without them knowing. So he sort of gives a couple of orders. It's very much an allegory for drug use here. We keep making jokes about steroids, but it's very much his fix has run out and he needs to get another one.
Worth pointing out, we are not advocating drugs. It's
not at all.
Very much
but it is very much
of the episode.
And I don't think they intend that in a negative way, but it is that the reality is, whether you want to call it a sugar fix or a drug fix or whatever it is, he has absorbed something which is running out, and his body or his computer system in this instance is saying, we need more of this. So he's like, oh, I need to go get some.
And we work out really that throughout this episode, his power, whilst it is awesome, is not absolute and drains fairly quickly.
Finite.
So you think all he's done has jetted at 100 miles an hour away from this island, gone back to the Predacon base, taken out Megatron in double quick time, and that's it. It's gone. So it's not going to get him that far. He feels up until this point he's going to be invincible forever. But if you keep having to go back to the well, then there's a chink in your armor, isn't there?
Yeah, very much so.
So again, Cheetor is doing his best mountain goat impression, hiding just out of range of these new turrets that have been put in, so he doesn't get shot. We'll throw that little nugget in, but he's practically at the Predacon base, so he hasn't gone back to the Axelon at this point, but he is looking to see what Pterosaur has done. He's witnessed this battle, and to which he replies, ultra bad. This is pretty serious now. They've got to kind of deal with, okay, no Megatron, but a very powered up Pterosaur. And And then Pterosaur starts doing, as you say, a rah-rah speech and starts giving out orders. But as they're preparing, or Pterosaur wants to prepare to do a frontal attack of the Maximals and take them all out, Pterosaur's power starts to drain and he does a self-diagnostic. And as you say, the power starts to go. He has to jet off. He instantly nominates Tarantulas to take command quite hastily. And then the three remaining Predacons of Scorponok, Waspinator, and Tarantulas are left as Pterosaur jets away. Scorponok isn't very happy and again reiterates his self-appointed, what does he mean you're in command? I'm second in command. To which Tarantulas is like, what do I care? I'll leave you to it.
So now Cheetor makes his way back to the Axelon and flies down the corridor and into the command center. And I think what they're going
Sideways
for
drift.
here is like a pan around the room in like a circular motion, but limitations at the time. They end up more with Cheetor just kind of drifting like he's on black ice and his feet are going every which way. It's very comical. But essentially he's there to tell the Maximals what's going on.
But at that point as well, just when Cheetor turns up, Rat Trap's playing cards. Who knew that in the scientific vessel of the Axelon that he's betting 500,000 credits or whatever, Shanix or whatever they're using as he's playing a poker game, it seems. And then to which Optimus comes along, turn it off, and he goes, Optimus.
It makes sense. He definitely seems like a bit of a gambler, old Rat Trap.
He does, doesn't he? Yeah, doesn't he? So Cheetor then explains what he's seen once he gathers himself and transforms and explains it all. Primal isn't initially too concerned about Pterosaur, but he's thinking more about what happened to Megatron, to which Cheetor says, well, Pterosaur scrapped him like he was a maintenance spot and he's going to attack our base. And now the rest of the Maximals are starting to take notice. They're thinking, okay, this is quite a credible threat. But Rat Trap is a bit more wisecracking once again. He's like, look, even on this weird planet, mountains don't fly. And that's when you get the scientific brain of Rhinox being like, well, if there was quite a condensed form of Energon, then it could lift a mountain off the ground.
Yeah.
But interestingly, at that point, they take no time at all in identifying where this mountain is. So,
So we do get a very nice transition from their on-screen map to the actual mountain. But yes, it's very funny, again, going back to this communication issues that they have. Like we discussed last episode, how somehow they can communicate through this probe to the base. This time, somehow, they are live tracking these bots in motion towards this island, which does glitch out, to be fair, but the fact that they're doing it in the first place, and yet yesterday they didn't know what's going on, tomorrow they won't know what's going on.
No, it's very
a little
fickle,
inconsistent.
Yeah. But let's have a look at that. Then we've gone from, in 2 episodes, standing stones to floating mountains. This is really kind of ramped up as to what the planet can find and produce. And we find this further on with effectively floating islands and temples and anything else that can come. There's enough outer play going on now. It's not just a barren battlefield for the Maximals and Predacons to fight on.
Mm-hmm.
So Pterosaur turns out very weak, very drained, and it's like what we're saying, effectively, with a sugar crash, he's down, his energy levels are low, but he's heading his way back to the source of the Energon to get another surge of power. But then Tarantulas is following on the ground and say, that's right, leave me to your source of power and I'll just sit here. This is again Tarantulas being in the game for himself. And we start to see very much the offshoot Predacon doing his work rather than a team player.
Yeah, so, he's very scheming, and there is a note there where he goes, this Energon's not real good, but I'll be quick. So he's but mind you, he says that like it's an issue with his bot mode, but then he's in spider mode going up his line anyway, so it kind of doesn't make sense. But he's aware of it, and he's thinking, look, it's not going to matter. We do cut then back to Primal and Rat Trap, and we've got this as our banner on Facebook. We've got Primal in flight mode and Rat Trap holding onto the back of his sort of, I don't know, neck guard
hood,
thing.
isn't it?
Yeah, his hood, with his little rat hands. He's not really happy to be there. And he says,
isn't there a good bit of you're just gonna go.
Yeah, that's right.
Sorry, I'll let you go in.
And he says, if he wanted to fly, he would have been a bat, not a rat. Now, I wonder if this is a nod towards Optimus Primal the bat, or if it's just a little play on words. Either way, it's quite fun and quite enjoyable.
I think there's a lot. You could probably say it's just a coincidence because bat sounds like rat, and bats are effectively rats with wings, aren't they? So I get it, but it's a nice play ploy to be, what was Primal's original toy. It might have just been happy coincidence.
I like to think that it's just, there's a little nod there, just a little nod.
And Primal's reaction was just as good. He said, this is again where you just get that humane side. He said, it was the quickest way to get that. And will you stop wiggling?
He's a giant rat, to be fair, on the back of...
It's pretty big.
Yeah. That's like having a school-aged kid on your back and you're trying to run or walk. Yeah, so it's fair enough.
He's doing the school run, isn't he?
The little bit of banter there is good. I always enjoy the banter between Primal and Rat-Trap.
So at this point, we got 4 Transformers on the island. We got Pterosaur, who is getting ready to juice himself back up. Tarantulas is making his own way up at his own pace. And we got that Primal and Rat-Trap land on the island, and instantly Primal starts shorting out and turns into his gorilla mode pretty quickly. So they work out that it's a bit tricky. As Primal and Rat-Trap are starting to make their way in beast modes, and they're like, this is very serious energon, they witness Pterosaur juicing himself back up for the second time. This time he doesn't shock himself back into it. He just puts his hands back into the similar position they were and absorbs the power once again. Now, to which I'm thinking at this point, do you think Optimus Primal would have been tempted to do it himself?
No, I don't think so, because he's very, not that he doesn't take risks, but he is very play it safe, by the book type guy. I think it's not that hey, he knows that it probably help in the situation. He knows that it would help in the situation, but I think he knows that it's not the right thing to do either. So whilst that inkling of a temptation could be there, I don't think Prime would ever actually go and do something like that. That would be more of a Dinobot or a Cheetor type rash decision,
It would have made for such an interesting balance, wouldn't it, of a souped up Pterosaur, and you could have a souped up Primal, to which we could see kind of these dogfights in the sky. What would a souped up Primal with
we do get a souped up Primal soon.
Yeah, you're one of your favourites, I know.
Yep.
So Pterosaur quickly works out that he's there and says, Optimus, how nice of you to save me the trouble of hunting you down, to which Primal just simply says, let's do it. And they have a dogfight in the sky, because it's the only way that you can kind of match Pterosaur is with Optimus's jets. However, as it goes on, is Primal knows he can't fight too much in robot mode for too long. He can't withstand this much exposure to energon. And Pterosaur is again showing his arsenal. He's using his shoulder cannons. He also uses eye lasers further on. So again, we just see how powered up Pterosaur is.
Yeah, and they just, even though Primal is fairly well matched in the sky, he just doesn't have the firepower. And as you say, he's very limited on how far he can go before those surges get to him. Now, Pterosaur does blast those shoulder cannons into a floating rock above Primal, and which shatters and hits Primal while he's flying. Now, we have a laugh about the confetti. Now, normally we get squares. We got triangles today, so they're trying something different.
More money in the studio. But as we're going on with the dogfight, you might ask yourselves, what happened to Rat-Trap and what happened to Tarantulas? Effectively, Primal was taking Pterosaur away, and Pterosaur doesn't know that Rat-Trap is with him. So Rat-Trap is left to effectively blow up the energon. I don't know if they necessarily come to this conclusion themselves, or if this is a decision that Rat-Trap takes upon himself. But he whips out some demolition charges, sticks them on the energon crystals, sets them to detonate. But lo and behold, a spider appears.
Yes, a sneaky little spider. And of course, because of this energon, they have to be in their beast mode soon after. So we get a nice little tussle between the spider and the rat, which I guess in theory are fairly well scaled to themselves, even though he's kind of a giant spider and a giant rat. So they're tumbling and rolling around on the mountain trying to fight in their beast modes, which makes them sort of adapt to what they need to do. And this is where opposable thumbs will always win, because Rat-Trap is able to pick up a ball of mud and fling it at Tarantulas' face, which gets the distraction.
Here's mud in your eye. It's but I thought I've got a note here that is a good follow-up. This is a replay of the web episode. So these two kind of having some unfinished business, but it's kind of effectively a duel to the death, but really none of them can stay there. So to win, you've got to get off the island, and little does Tarantulas know that Rat-Trap has set demolition charges. Mm-hmm. But Rat-Trap knows he's got to deal with Tarantulas and also get off the island, but can't get off the island because Primal's nowhere near to get him down. So he's kind of looking down a barrel of a gun here. He's not doing well. However, going back to Primal and Pterosaur, just when it looks like Primal is having to turn into beast mode, he's damaged, as you say, the confetti rocks have knocked him down. Pterosaur's there ready to finish the job, and another drain sets in. Again, this power is just not lasting.
Yeah,
so
timing was just perfect.
Yeah, always perfect. But he says, no, not now, and has to turn to beast mode. Very wearily flaps around and says, I'll be back as soon as I replenish my power. Off he goes again, very gingerly, very slowly. So with that, we follow Pterosaur to go back to reclaim his source for a third time, and he spots the demolition charges and instantly knows what it is, and to which he says that they'll tear this mountain to pieces. They start to detonate, and Pterosaur very slowly flaps away to a point that you kind of feel he almost doesn't escape. He's not exactly going away at any great speed, but the mountain starts to rupture, the crystals start to fall. Tarantulas isn't too happy with this, instantly zip wires himself down to the ground. He must have a lot of thread on him or webbing to get himself, because he's quite a long way up. I will say at this point, there's the battle between Tarantulas and Rat Trap. And when they kind of fling each other off when they're fighting in beast mode, Tarantulas effectively at one point lands on his back. Now, that's how you kill a spider, by the way. If a tarantula or a spider goes on its back and legs in the air, they can't self-right. I guess he transforms.
The Tarantulas Rat Trap thing's quite fun too, because that continues throughout multiple seasons. They often have little battles between them, and I know we're getting ahead, but in season 2, when they get their transmetal forms, they both have vehicle modes essentially, and there is a little bit of comparison there as well. So that will continue the little competition between those two.
I think that's one thing that Beast Wars, I don't know if it did fully as it could, but there were kind of matchups along the way. You kind of felt Cheetor would square up to Waspinator, Rat Trap would square up to Tarantulas, but they were a bit more fluid with some of the rivalries where they could. But Rat Trap and Tarantulas, there was even one episode where they very briefly have to work together. So there's good dynamics there.
As you say, that the island is now erupting and everyone sort of exits stage left, but Primal can't transform. So he's made it back up to Rat Trap, and they're like, what do? We got to get out of here. Rat Trap's sort of like, transform and get us the hell off this island. And Primal's like, I can't. Like, I'm too damaged or whatever it is. And Rat Trap's sort of like, we're not, are we? And Primal's like, jump on.
We're not going to do it.
And
Let's go.
He literally just jumps off in gorilla mode. All the way
this
down.
Great kind of energy.
Another slow-mo.
Another Michael Bay-esque.
And essentially, Primal catches a tree on the way down. He must have really strong arms and a really good tree. And he goes, oh, my arms feel like refried rubber bands,
What a thing to say.
You picture that thing of his arms being stretched out. And
let's think about it. He's completely free falling. What, I don't know, huge distances, and
it's got to be terminal
to
velocity by the time he hits that tree.
Gotta be. Yet he's managed to hang on. But it's kind of a way of like gorilla hangs onto tree, does
a little bit of fun. We'll let it go. We won't look into it too closely.
To which they kind of have a little bonding moment at the end, to which he says, you do know that was crazy. This is Rat Trap to Primal. And Primal says, sometimes crazy works. By the way, you did good up there. Rat Trap replies, yeah, you weren't so bad yourself, but don't tell anyone I said so. And there's kind of that
he doesn't want him to know.
Going on.
Again, we see that nice friendship side between Primal and Rat Trap. They have that banter. They respect each other, but Rat Trap's like, just don't let the other guys know that I actually respect you.
But this is what I like of Primal's like humane character. You can't imagine Optimus Prime talking in that kind of sense of sometimes crazy works. Prime wouldn't take crazy steps.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
Primal was like, I've got to jump off this mountain because the alternative is death.
At least we might survive. It's worth the risk.
Yeah.
And inversely, Pterosaur gets back to the Predacon base and he's in the shit. Megatron is too not happy.
So he's like, at least I got rid of Megatron. He's so weary and tired, and you hear these footsteps. A completely reformatted Megatron who has been restored from Scorponok and Waspinator, getting into the CR chamber. It took the entire episode to repair him. And David Kay very quietly says, Well, well, look who's back. So as we see with Pterosaur, he turns white come the end of it and realizes he's in trouble with Megatron and order is restored. What do we think happens to Pterosaur at this point? Because it's left on that, I suppose, cliffhanger. It's not given too much thought, but what do we think becomes of Pterosaur?
I mean, officially you would think he'd get locked in the brig for a little while, but knowing Megatron, he probably puts a big size 15 purple boot up his ass.
Yeah, I feel this is where we're in a bit of an interesting point, is that, Pterosaur tried to kill Megatron, but Megatron needs troops, and he's only got a squad of 5. He can't go down in numbers, but he needs to punish as well. We don't know. We just know he's in trouble and he's not got the power he once had. This is Pterosaur. So it's always kind of interesting that it's said at the start of the episode that Pterosaur has tried to overthrow before, been unsuccessful. This time he was more successful than he has been. So I wonder what his comeuppance is. We don't know.
And to your point with Megatron, at the moment, he's got 4 guys. So he doesn't have a lot of options here. He kind of needs them because guess what? The Maximals have got 5. Later on, when he gets more troops, he does get a little bit more fast and free with threatening the demise of some of these crew members, because he knows he's got firepower up his sleeve, especially once he has Rampage in hand and Inferno that he can use for various evil doing things. But at the moment, he really has to think about, as much as I'd like to get rid of Pterosaur for this mutiny, the fact is we need him around here.
It's very back to the Starscream. We keep saying it, the Starscream character. Why did Megatron keep Starscream around in G1? The amount of times he screwed him over, it's the same dynamic. Maybe it's a case of keeping your friends close, your enemies closer. But yeah, I think if someone shot me to a million pieces, I wouldn't exactly be too welcoming to them when they came back to the base.
Yeah, I'd just like to imagine he probably copped a bit of a beating off camera.
Yeah. So looking at the episode as a whole, I really like this episode. It genuinely is one of my favorite episodes in all the Beast Wars. I'm a big fan of Pterosaur, and we see the best of him here. Considering he's pretty stupid in every other episode, it's not saying much. Yeah. But we get to see this great voice acting from Doug Parker. He comes across as a serious threat. But saying that, whereas with the previous episode in Chain of Command, we have everlasting storylines going on and stuff to carry through, this is a one and done episode. Nothing in this episode gets carried across, which I think is a shame.
There's nothing. It's very much a standalone thing. The floating island, we do see other similar concepts, but this actual floating island full Energon doesn't exist anymore. Pterosaur doesn't get any other spotlights. We get some dynamic of other interactions of characters, but that's going to happen because they're still around. But as you say, this is one and done. That's it. Look, it's not filler by any means, and it's a fantastic episode. And even though we want you to listen to all of our episodes, if you're only going to watch a few of the episodes along, watch this one. It's got good visuals with Pterosaur. It makes a little bit more sense when we talk about like the enlarged cannons and the weapons that he has and the interactions between the characters make a little bit more sense. It's a very good episode in general. It's just a shame that it's very just its own thing. Like there's no interconnection between the plot. Like there's no aliens in this one, all that sort of stuff.
I think the only thing that we can say it takes on is you see a little bit more Tarantulas going out of his own, and he starts to stretch his spider legs a bit more in further episodes to come. We see the start of it here. Up to this point, he's kind of been a Predacon like any other, but maybe other than that, you see a bit more with Rat Trap and Primal's relationship, and it goes on. But Pterosaur falls back in line, as you say, around the island. I think that's a real shame. Whilst we see other islands and other things, I really am somewhat caught in between here. Let's have a look at this Energon that can be absorbed to your superstructure and give you this boost. You would think that Megatron and everyone else would be on that like a shot, but I'm glad in a sense that they didn't, because otherwise it would just give everyone the same advantage, and they'd just be souping up with it, going Super Saiyan every time.
Yeah, it would be too much of a MacGuffin that was just readily available at moment's notice, But like you say, it's a little bittersweet. In one sense, you would think, especially from the Predacon team, there's Energon that can do this. Why aren't we finding it all the time? And how do we harness it and make it last? And then the flip side is, like you say, getting rid of it and not going back to it takes the convenience out.
Yeah, this is something that you got to remember, that one of the premises, particularly in season 1, is both the Maximals and Predacons get quite shackled. They can't be in their robot modes too long. They've got this Energon vein that runs Megatron's under both bases. That generally means they can't blow each other's base up. You know, the communications is a problem. So they have these things that forever limit them. You can't, unless you're inside a big almond. But you can't just have, oh, look, we don't need to be afraid of Energon at all. If anything, it's better for us. Too much, there isn't such a thing as too much of a good thing. But I think that's what the likes of Tarantulas and the others in the end were like, this is too unstable. You know, it worked this time, it's not going to work every time.
I think what part of the reason that this episode is fond for us is because it was a little bit different to the norm. It took a character that was kind of nothing and again goes on to be bugger all as well and make him interesting for a minute. And anyone that grew up in the 90s liked things like you mentioned Dragon Ball Z and things like that. Power-ups are fun. So you get that little power-up. He blows up Megatron, which was unexpected. Like it was just a fun episode. And being standalone and it didn't need to contribute to points, it was actually too a little bit of a positive as well internally for that story, where it's not going, oh, we need to include that little bit of the alien thing. We need to do this little thing with Cheetor. Like it was just, let's give a fun episode to Pterosaur, focus on that, and that's all it needs to be.
And it was quite, I just want to say brave, because whilst Primal does get a bit of an outing in it, Primal is quite absent from the last episode, and yet everyone else gets a mention. There's no Dinobot at all in this one. I don't even think we see him at the Axelon base. Megatron's out of it for large spells as well, and Rhinox gets one of the fewer appearances. Yeah. So we see all of the Predacons, but it's a good episode and a good story without relying on some of the larger characters, larger in terms of stature. I
know we said it last episode about like being a semi-spotlight episode on Rat Trap. This is by its nature a true spotlight episode on Pterosaur. Now, absolutely, as this season goes on and obviously further seasons, more characters are introduced and Pterosaur takes a further backseat to these characters that are essentially more interesting and more fun. So having this early on and giving him a nice quote-unquote spotlight episode is nice to have for him.
I think you can say, as much as I like Pterosaur and his Starscream ways, and I'm a fan of Starscream as well, as most of us are, there's only so much you can play on the scheming and conniving character trait of wanting to overthrow. There's, how many times can you do it? And we're back to G1 with Megatron and Starscream, aren't we? Tries to overthrow Megatron forgives him, and again, and he keeps him around. And there would come a point if they kept doing that, with that being Pterosaur's main trait, it would be like, just get rid of him by now. You're getting more loyalty out of Waspinator, and he's useless.
Very. Look, I'll tell you what, this, even though Beast Wars is still a toy commercial, if out of any Transformers media, in my opinion, that could be a standalone show without toys, it is Beast Wars. But as much as it is a toy commercial, I'll tell you right now, this episode sold me on multiple toys of Pterosaur more than any other character. Because you've got the original basic Flip Changer, which we discussed in episode 4, go back and listen to it, is very basic, it's not accurate, it's good enough, but it's nothing special. But I wanted that toy because of this episode. The recent Metagate Masterpiece Pterosaur, or whatever they call it, I forget, but their version of a Air King, a Masterpiece Pterosaur. I wanted this, a little bit because I wanted cast members, and that's the option, but primarily because it made me feel like the Pterosaur from this episode. So it did its job, at least in this instance with me.
You see the best that Pterosaur can be. And I was, spoilers, I was quite sad when he doesn't make it into season 2. Although, as you say, he falls to the back of the queue again. He just doesn't do too much of anything. We see a bit of his weaponry reappear, but not to this degree, not to this scale. He's very much had his wings clipped following this episode.
Unfortunately for him, characters like Black Arachnia are much more interesting. She has a lot of story for stuff. Inferno is a cooler character. He's fun. There's funny scenes. One of my favorite toys and characters in the season. So it's just, Pterosaur was basic. He's a bit dumb. There's not a lot going on there physically and mentally. He just, it's just the way it is. And I think that's part of the reason, I know we're getting ahead of ourselves, but the reason he didn't really make it forward into other seasons, or at least from a character and plot point of view, it wasn't necessary, you know what I mean? I know they need new toys and they've got to get rid of someone, but from a canon point of view, it made sense for him to disappear and Scorponok to disappear where others wanted to carry on.
He gets surpassed, doesn't he? And I think that's fair. At least we do get to see him in this guise, in this form, and Doug Parker again doing an absolutely brilliant job when he's roided up to hell and overpowered and overzealous, and that's really played into what the voice directors wanted, what the writers wanted, and what Doug Parker was able to produce.
I do love,
as I say,
I do love that the voice goes from that very pitchy, whingy, like you say, scheming, conniving voice to that very that deep, got that growl and power in it. So well done, Doug. Very good. Like, obviously the bloke knew what he was doing. He was the reason for a lot of the casting and stuff in the show. But seeing as he had such a minimal role in it, whenever he was on screen, he put a lot into his lines and what he did in those scenes. Like, I know we went back to it before, but in episode, was it 4? He had that scene with Dinobot where he just kept escalating the voice as he got more excited about his plan. It was very much the same when he's rallying the troops before running out of power that first time. It's very like, I'm like, it's just, I've got this power and I want to use it. And he puts that emotion through the character. And again, it's a kid's show, but the voice actors in the show had the opportunity to voice the characters before the animation. So the animators had to catch up to the voice acting, which is part of the reason why the show is so well written and comes across with real, I want to say, humanity and actual, you can feel the characters. It's not like I love the Unicron trilogy for the toys and all that stuff, but it's ADR. They've got to fit lip flaps.
Yeah, David Kay has said that recently about how sometimes they have to do their recording, as you say, to lip flaps, to very timed scenes, and then you feel rushed and it loses emotion. But with Beast Wars, we got, and they've said this as well, all of the voice actors, by a few episodes, they start to settle down, they flesh out the characters more. You get like the growls of Megatron when he's fighting with Pterosaur, the roar and the frustration that you're allowed to then do the animation around.
Well, they're finding personality that people and animals and things develop over their life. They had to do it over a few recording practices and 5 episodes, like that. It's hard. It's just like any show that you watch. Watch sitcoms that you love and you cherish. Go back and watch the first few episodes of some of their shows, and they're brutal because there's no energy there yet. And this show is very much like a live action TV show where they can record lines and they've got time for the dialogue. Those foreign series that are imported, that are animated first, the difficulty is in whatever language it was recorded, it took that many seconds to say the line, and that's how it is. But for the ADR, you might have 10 seconds of stuff to say in a 5-second hole because of the translation. And that means they're very restricted, and it's the reason why sometimes things don't translate directly across. Where Beast Wars was the opposite. They had all the time in the world, and they had a brilliant voice director in Susan Blue, RC from the 86 movie. So she, for all intents and purposes, and what we've been told and heard from these actors, was an absolutely brilliant voice director. So they had guidance, and they had time, and they had experience, and they just put all this together, and you got a beautiful performance from all these actors. And again, going back to Doug Parker, he really puts it in where he can. He doesn't have much, but where it is brilliant.
Yeah, I think to one example that you mentioned there with foreign translation is RID 2001, which of course was a Japanese series that was then brought over to Western audiences and had to be redubbed, and you're having to kind of make it work. But one example you said of like when they can kind of flesh it out and make the scenes themselves is when, that I quite like, when Pterosaur appears at the base for the first time to challenge Megatron. He does that screech as he comes in, and then that deep voice is there as he's floating in air. And the animation has been set to this kind of swarming appearance as it swells on screen, and the voice is there really accentuating that. And it just makes for a better product, better story, better flow. And it's a shame that it is kind of one and done, but it is a memorable episode for a one and done episode.
To your point with that sort of squawking scream as he comes in, back to that brilliant sound design of this show, they have that afterburner roar. As a rocket or something lands, that roar changes as the flame gets closer to the ground, and they've got that nicely. So you've got that combination of Doug Parker screaming as he comes in, and that
Just the filthy lizard like yourself would conceive of, Megatron.
As it sort of hits the ground. Brilliant.
Oh, that's brilliant. Okay, well, that's it for episode 6, an episode that I was particularly looking forward to with Power Surge. So all that's left to tell you is where you can find us. So we got Linktree, and that's probably a good place to start because you'll see all of our platforms on there. If you look for That's Just Prime, a Beast Wars podcast, you'll see under Linktree that we are on X, Twitter, we're on Blue Sky, we're on Facebook, Instagram. We are then on our podcast platforms, which is not limited to, but the likes of Spotify, Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and we are also on YouTube as well. What we have been doing is we've been uploading the videos with the WAV format that you can premiere and watch live, where one of us will be in the chat at the time as well, that you can talk to us whilst the episode is being listened to when that goes live, when it premieres. Anything you want to add to that?
And we've been getting quite a few, we've been getting a few regular viewers to the premieres too. So we're building a little bit of interaction there, and we welcome more people to come and join us for that. Look, sometimes it's just a little bit of a hangout. We quite often are just sort of having a little bit of a stir with each other in the chat and just commenting on things that we've said. But we're trying to build a community around the pod, so we really want people to come along to those premieres. Obviously, you can interact with us through our personal social medias or the pod social media, but this gives us a chance to have a live interaction while we're having a listen to the recording.
Definitely. Okay, and also, where can you find us? So I'll start with myself. I am ArrowFyre, so you will find me on all of the platforms I more or less mentioned. You'll find me doing videos on YouTube primarily. I'm also on Facebook. I'm on X, Twitter. I'm on Blue Sky, and I'm on Instagram as well. Instagram's a bit different. Arrow_fire, fire with a Y. Everything else is just typically ArrowFyre. And Chris, when can people find you?
Look, I'm Chris Carnage, one word with a few variations, pretty much everywhere. Carnage Creations on my YouTube. Unfortunately, I've had a few, I said this last episode, I've been unfortunate that I can't get the exact same on everything. My YouTube used to be called something different as well. Long story short, I used to be a professional wrestler. I changed my branding to fit in with that just to make it a little bit more cohesive. So there's a little variance in some of the stuff. But you mentioned our link tree for the pod. If you go to that, which is just linktree/That's Just Prime Pod, it will be linked in all our posts. It not only has all the places that you can find the pod, but it also has a couple of our personal links as well. So if you're unsure where to find us, go to the link tree, you'll find us there. If not, on X and Blue Sky, we're listed on there as tags and stuff like that. So we're easy enough to find. Most of you are listening, probably have found us anyway or know us. But for those that are new, please come and follow us on those places. Say hi. Let us know what you thought of the episode. We're having an absolute great time recording these. Personally, Ian and I have a lot of fun doing it. We have a lot of fun listening to it, and we like interacting with everyone that's listening as well. So thank you all.
Yeah, absolutely. And next episode that we will be reviewing is Fallen Comrades, which will be an introduction of a new character, which is good to see. We have been using the same characters that we've been starting with, having spotlight episodes. So we've got a new addition coming in our next episode, which will be 2 weeks once this video is live.
Absolutely. So again, I want to thank everyone for listening, everyone that watches along on YouTube. We really do appreciate all of you. We mentioned last episode, and we've had a little bit of feedback from it so far, but we want some more. When do you like to listen to the pod? What do you listen on? And also from a YouTube side of things, when is the best time for you to watch that premiere? So if you wanted to join us for the chat, what time of day suits you? And let us know where you are too. Don't just say 9 o'clock and they're like, cool. Are you in Africa? Are you in Australia? Are you in New Zealand? Like, where are you? We need to have a geographical location to figure out the time. We're smart, but we're not that smart.
Okay, thanks everyone for watching. As always, we will see you on the next one.
Goodbye.
Well, that's just prime.